You know what? My name is Philip DeFranco, and today my guest is Dan Pfiefer. He's a host for PodSaveAmerica and the Cricket Media Podcast Network, and before that, he was a senior advisor to President Barack Obama. And today, with everything that's been going on, we talked about the redistricting standoff, Trump firing the person in charge of accurate economic statistics, how Democrats can fight back better, and really just so much more. So hey, if you already hit that follow button and gave us 5 stars, just sit back, relax, and enjoy today's show. So, Dan, I was gonna come in really to talk to you at first about something lighter, but it looks like Dan Pfiefer is fiending for a fight this morning.
Yes.
So I'll set the stage. Last week, jobs numbers come out, looked bad, or we'll say at least not great. Trump hates it. He fires, I believe it's Erica Mickenteffer over it. She's the commissioner of labor statistics. People left, right, center are like, what the hell is this about? And this morning, I see you tweet all of these supposedly smart Trump supporters like Chamath and Ray Dalio pretend Trump fired the BLS director because of a disagreement over survey methods. Well, here's what Trump said this morning on CNBC. It's a highly political situation. It's totally rigged. Smart people know it. People with common sense know it. And a lot of people like to keep their head under the covers and just not believe it. So with you coming out of the gate this morning swinging, if that's your view and that's your reaction, are these guys liars or stupid?
Well, I should just say, to give you a sense of how much I'm feeding for a fight, I probably sent that at before 6 a.m. my time because I'm on the West Coast. So it's really just out of bed, opened up my laptop, and started swinging. Like, I think that they are both in some senses. I think you have a set of people who decided they were going to support Trump in the 2024 election for some set of reasons. A lot of it probably self-interested financial. You know, in the case of like the all-in tech bro podcast guys, they were inside the tent all of a sudden with all this access to power. And now they're going around trying to justify and explain and intellectualize the things Trump are doing that they would in any other situation be highly offended by. Because I was watching both. I saw tweets over the weekend from Chamath and from Ray Dalio, the finance guy, making a point that is a legitimate point that maybe there are better ways to get the jobs numbers. Like it's
Sure.
Because like it's a survey. With any survey, you have response rate issues where people aren't responding as much as they were before for all host set of reasons. Is there a better way to do it? And if that were Trump's argument, that would be a thing. But that's not what Trump's argument is. Trump has no thoughts on survey methodology. And he said when he did it that they were corrupt. And so just like be honest with yourself. You can say, I like Trump, but I don't like what he did here. But don't try to go around and trying to like intellectualize the obviously just like spur of the moment authoritarian. And this is a very dangerous thing. Like we sort of laugh about it, but the jobs numbers move the market. They
Right.
help the Fed governors decide whether to set interest rates. So if those are rigged, or even if there's a perception that they're rigged, like why would whoever Trump puts in, everyone's going to assume because he fired this person for giving numbers that he did not like, is going to assume that the numbers are not legitimate because that person has an incentive to give the numbers Trump wants. And so we're like in a dangerous situation, and one of the ways authoritarians succeed is because powerful stakeholders just give in instead of actually calling out what's happening. So yeah, I'm kind of fired up this morning. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I guess I was a little confused because it seems like why does he go this route? Which maybe potentially it buys him some months of grace with some of the people that support him if the jobs numbers don't change and we do trust the numbers that continue to come out. When it seems like he could have used this as maybe a hammer to go after Jerome Powell to go look at the jobs numbers.
Yeah.
I've wanted you to go a certain way. I don't understand that. Like, do you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, it's all. I think we were in a situation. I remember reading this story about Pat Cipollone, who was the White House counsel in Trump's first term. And what he used to do is Trump would say something, and he would say, "Give me a week to go see if we can get this done." And then by the seventh day, Trump would have forgotten about it. So it was like his tactic to keep Trump from doing the things Trump doesn't want to do. Now everyone in the government tries to be the first person to do what Trump wants to do. So he wakes up, sees the numbers, is pissed off, decides to try to fire this person. And they immediately just fire them instead of trying to think about it. Because if you take a step back, Trump wants rates cut, but he also wants good jobs numbers. And those things don't actually work. So he's in a situation right now where if these numbers were legitimate, and they are legitimate, but it would get him his rate cut. But instead, he's doing the thing that it makes no sense, and there are people helping him do the thing that makes no sense.
Well, so with the numbers with the numbers that come in next, do you have a fear? Because I was listening this morning to Bill Beach, right? He's the former head of BLS in 2017. He was a Trump appointee. He's freaked out by this change. He thinks it doesn't make sense, but his mindset seems to be there's going to be a perception issue, but also the numbers. He has faith that they will continue to be correct because of the people that are working in that department. Like you said, there is a conversation about funding and where they're putting money and methodology that things could be better. But he has a faith and a trust there. And as someone that comes from, I think, a very strategic background, do you think that the focus on do we trust these numbers? What's the impact on to the market going to be if everything is business as usual? Does that kind of hurt the messaging of like, okay, well, people keep saying, oh, that's scary, but it ends up actually not being anything that big?
Well, I think the problem here is like the point that I saw Bill Beach make this point about the numbers that came out that made Trump mad, which is there is a system in place. There are people. It's very hard for one person to mess it up because there are all these inputs coming in. Right. The question we just don't have, because there's no transparency in government, is when the next person comes in, right? Like what happens at the end of that product, right? Before it actually comes out. And so we just like there are definitely some safeguards in the system which may be fine, but we just don't know. And when you erode this is how he ended up here. Is he erodes trust in institutions to the point that people question everything, even when it is well-founded, evidence about everything from Trump's crimes to climate change. And so this just adds a real uncertainty into the economy. And what you need, the economy demands certainty, right? Businesses have to be able to plan. They have to be able to think about if the unemployment rate is going up, people will have less money to spend on their products. So they will think about what product lines they're going to launch, what factories they're going to build. And we already have all this uncertainty in the economy from Trump's like on again, off again taco tariffs. This adds something else. And I find it very, very concerning. Like maybe we just are not, it'll be very hard to have real confidence in the numbers going forward as long as Trump is president, and maybe going forward after that, right? Because it's always like, this was a thing no one ever did, right? Like when Obama was president, Jack Welch, who was the former CEO of GE, like really famous business guy, right before the election, the numbers were good for Obama. And he went on MSNBC. It was on Morning Joe, I think. And it's like, the numbers are cooked. The Chicago guys are cooking the numbers. And everyone, Republicans and Democrats, people in the business community, assailed him because that was such an irresponsible thing to say. But now we're not only just like, that was just a guy outside, like a well-respected business person outside of government. Now you have the president firing the person who gives the numbers. Like, that's concerning.
Right. And I mean, a lot's changing now. A lot's going to be changing in the near future when we start looking at a 1 to 2 year window. I mean, it's connected, but I mean, do you think that the central bank independence is going to last, whether it be perception wise or, whatever the reality is on the ground?
I'm very concerned about it because we know that this Republican Senate will confirm a ham sandwich, right? They've done Pete Hegseth, they've done Tulsi Gabbard, they've done RFK Jr. And so Trump is obviously only going to appoint someone who he thinks is going to do what Trump wants when Trump wants it. And so will the Republicans confirm that person? Probably. And then you have that person in potentially for 10 years. So yeah, I am concerned about that. And if you start cutting rates at a time, we're going to spike inflation. Growth is down. It's all very dangerous, right? There's a reason there is an independence in the Fed, and it's not just in this exact moment in the American economy. Is if like the U.S. dollar is the world's currency, right? It is the safest investment in the world, and if people start to question whether U.S. monetary policy is being politicized, that is going to reverberate across the world. I am not an expert in any of this, but the people who I've talked to about this on PodSaveAmerica and elsewhere scare the shit out of me, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about that, and then, but when you talk about they'll confirm anyone, it makes me think of the Republicans in Congress, and obviously House Republicans, they're going to soon have a vote on tariffs. Yeah. Do you think that it's going to be another rubber stamp situation, or do you think can the polling get to a place where they actually do something where they actually take a stand to any meaningful degree, rather than three people act like they have a different opinion, but it feels safe to because they know it's going to pass anyway.
I think that can only happen after the filing deadlines are done, so that Republicans are no longer worried about a primary. What they're so scared about right now is that Trump will back their opponent and they will lose their primary. Next spring, most of those primary deadlines will be over. So then, at least for this next election, they will not have a fear that Trump can run a primary opponent against them. So there's a chance we might see a modicum more independence after that moment. But right now, they would they view this, even the ones in very purple districts view this in a two-step process. They have to get through their primary first, and if Trump backs their primary opponent, they will lose. This is why Tom Tillis dropped out of the North Carolina Senate race. And then once they become the nominee, then maybe they can possibly find some independence. But I don't have high hopes for it. No one ever made a lot of money betting on the political courage of congressional Republicans. So,
well, okay, but so as we get closer to the midterms, and we're still, I mean, God, it's almost been, we're months away, but it's going to hit a year eventually, away from the election. People are still finding, lines in the sand, talking points. It even feels like over there with PodSaveAmerica, although I don't think you were a part of the specific podcast that day or that segment, you guys got a lot of attention over Israel and Gaza. And I wanted to know, when you guys go into, and I'm going to oversimplify it, you could walk through for the audience. When you guys are about to put out that episode, is there a conversation of, what does this say for our brand, our audience, Dems in general, independents out there? What's the conversation? Because it made a splash.
Yeah, I think as you mentioned, I was not part of that episode. I do Thursdays. That was, or I do Fridays. That was a Tuesday episode. I aligned. I talked a little bit in the next episode that I aligned with much of what they said there. I think like anyone who is in politics or in media, you have to think about the impact of what you say, right? That it has some impact, not just on your podcast or your brand, but also how will it be weaponized against Democrats? Right? We know that Fox News loves to do a Obama pod bros do trash X, right? And that should never change how we feel. That was I told my co-host, I think that was one of the best episodes they ever did, because it was very raw and honest and heartfelt, and that's how they believe, and that's what we should say. But you have to at least think about anytime I think anyone with a platform opens their mouth, what are the what are the ripple effects of you saying these things, right? Are people going to listen? Are they going to be mad? Are they going to want to distance themselves? But if you sincerely believe it, you just got to say it. This is what, as someone whose job for most of my career before podcasting was to say the words, I was speaking for someone else, right? President Obama, other politicians I work for. And there is something liberating about being able to just say what you think, right? And let's be honest, we don't work in the White House anymore. When you work in the White House, what you say really matters, right? Any junior press person could cause a market crash by saying the wrong thing, or cause an international incident by saying the wrong thing. Host of a podcast, people listen, right? Obviously, we're very fortunate with the audience we have, but it's not the same stakes, I'd say.
Right. I imagine they don't. Well, anyone can tie anything to anyone, but I imagine people don't go, well, that's essentially Obama saying it, right?
Yeah, I think much to probably President Obama's probably happy about this now, but people do not attribute what we say to him directly after all these years.
So I guess what has the reaction been to kind of saying that the next Dem nominee shouldn't accept AIPAC money, that military aid to Israel needs to be cut off, that it can't go back to a pre-October 7th status quo? What has that been for, I guess, people that and then people that maybe were never interested, or maybe were against the Pod Save America group?
Yeah, I think if you had been listening to Pod Save the World, which is the Tommy Vitor and Ben Rhodes' podcast, which focuses on international affairs, none of what was said there would be surprising. They have been incredibly aggressive critics of the how Israel's connected to the war in Gaza. They were very, very aggressive critics of how the Biden administration and the Biden administration's strategy, Israel. I think for some people who maybe don't listen to that podcast, who don't pay as close attention, because the clips of what my co-host said went viral, there are probably some folks on the left who were pleasantly surprised, right? The assumption might have been that we were, I think our ideology, both individually and as a podcast, is a little more complicated than I think people assume. But I think for a lot of people on the left, there's a lot of like those neoliberal pod bros who say this and assume that on every issue maybe that we're more in line with the Democratic establishment than they are, and I don't think that's actually the case. And this is certainly one where they're not. And I think some people, who we are friends with and agree with and have worked with, just fundamentally disagree on that. And that's been and our criticism of Israeli conduct in Gaza, and then previously the Biden administration's strategy for that, has been a point of contention with some of our former colleagues for a long time now.
Well, I guess, yeah. I mean, do a lot of those conversations end up, unfortunately, equating being against what Netanyahu is doing with automatically being anti-Semitic? Is there a lot of conflation when you have those conversations?
In some corners, yeah, for sure. In some corners, not necessarily with people in good faith, right? Like I think you can have good faith disagreements on this stuff, but like on Twitter, that is a very common. It's a common tactic from the right. It's something that even dates back to when Obama was doing the Iran deal, and when people. I was leaving right about the time that was coming together, but like when it was trying to pass in Congress the years later, like that was a common attack from a lot of the sort of neoconservative right would be if you're for the Iran deal or you're against Israel on this thing, you disagree with Netanyahu, that equates to anti-Semitism, or just criticism of Israel equates to anti-Semitism as opposed to criticism of the Netanyahu government. So I think I think you can have a good faith disagreement on these issues, but I think that happens in the less good faith part of the conversation.
Well, okay, so if you're having an in good faith conversation there, I mean, how do you navigate it there, where you go, okay, well, I think that it's not that, and this is why.
Yeah, I think sometimes you just have to agree to disagree, right? With people who have disagreements there, you can my argument when I've had these conversations with people is simply like we can put as like a lot of the conversation around, particularly what's going on with famine in Gaza, starts going backwards into this conversation of like, whose fault is it? How did we get here? What role does Hamas have? What the Hamas, ministry, the Gaza Ministry of Health is Hamas run, and therefore we can't trust them. And just say, like, my view is to tell people, so let's put that aside for right now. Is you have starving people, and particularly starving children, and whether the number is as high as the ministry says, or even a fraction of that, it's too many starving children, and it is true that Israel can do more to get aid to these people. So let's just ask them to do that, right? To try to just focusing on when you focus on this specific part of it, that's the place where maybe you can sometimes find some common ground. That's like that. We can save children's lives. If people do more, and to make the point that it is true that Hamas has real responsibility, it obviously has real responsibility. Without October 7th, we're not in this situation, one of the most horrendous terrorist attacks in American history. But Israel is an American ally for more than a half century here, right? They've been our partners across the board. It is not. We can and should hold Israel to a higher standard in this situation than Hamas, which is a terrorist organization. Yes, I would love it if Hamas would do more to help its people, but why would we expect them to do that? They knew this was a likely consequence of the attack they did on October 7th. So yes, Israel can and should do more, and to sort of get to there. These are very Middle East peace has never been an easy conversation to have in any going back centuries now. But obviously, it's a very freighted conversation with people who are operating in good faith right now, for sure.
Right. And when you look at both sides right now, where there are drastic divides among existing bases regarding Israel and Gaza, do you think that we are going to see a shakeup? Maybe not necessarily going into the midterms, but into the next presidential, because polling shows just an overwhelming majority of Democrats do not approve of what Netanyahu is doing. Yeah. Republicans, it's kind of stayed steady at around, I feel like 70% support. But if you go online, those who are against it are incredibly against it. The president's supporters saying this is an America first, this is Israel first. Like, do you think that we are going to see, to some degree, swapping, or is it just people expressing their displeasure? If you were to guess based off what you're seeing,
it's pretty like maybe you end up with a barbell effect where you have people on both sides, right? Who like I don't want use of the term extreme here. I think is unnecessarily pejorative, but you do have sort of the isolationist wing of the MAGA Republican Party, and you have a growing number of Democrats, and so you could possibly see some votes in Congress that bring those two together. If they get to they could get to a majority on, for instance, suspending offensive weapons, funding for offensive weapons to Israel, or something like that. This is really it's sort of a stunning shift in only 2 years in the politics here, because since the founding of the state of Israel, it's essentially been assumed bipartisan unanimity, with a handful of exceptions, on supporting Israel, and particularly on supporting Israel militarily. And so the idea that now you have, you had 27 Democrats vote to ban funding for offensive weapons in Israel last week. You have these Republicans who are against it. Like, that is a dramatic shift in the politics. In a, post Netanyahu Israel, that could start look different. You could have, this is very specific to Netanyahu and the way they've conducted this war, and the fact that there has not been under Netanyahu, at least for a decade now, any sort of real hope for any sort of two-state solution. Basically, the Israelis have taken that off the table. And so for much of time, you could believe that both you could support Israel and that there was and that Israel wanted to solve the problem, two-state solution. Mm-hmm. So if you were someone who believes in a two-state solution, it was not inconsistent with supporting Israel. Now, because of Gaza and everything's happened, it's much more complicated than that. So I would hate to make predictions on what I think is going to happen here. I think you could find some interesting coalitions on specific issues, on specific votes in Congress. But we'll have to see what happens, what happens in the near future here.
Yeah, it's something that's really, aside from everything that's happening, when I just think about it from the parties and support here in America, it has been wild because, I mean, you probably know far more people in this space, but it's been interesting to see some in 2015, 2016 go from never Trumpers being very vocal, almost to the point of it being their identity. And then Israel-Gaza happens and full-on Trump support. And so I am very interested on that split, but I am gonna move past that topic because what I was gonna actually open up today with, and it was
we're here 25 minutes in, we're here.
No, I know it was much lighter. Was I really enjoyed your piece recently about how the flood of Dem fundraising texts have hurt the party, and I wanted to kind of just for my audience hear you talk about it, not just from a place of like it being annoying, but just like your whole mindset behind that, if you would.
Yeah, so over the course of time, right? Like, I'll give you an example. Like, when I worked for President Obama during his campaigns, people would complain to me about the frequency of fundraising emails all the time. And I would, like, go talk to our digital fundraise people, and I'd be like, people are really annoyed about this. And they would show me, and it's like, actually, a lot of the ones that people are getting are not ours, right? They're just, we're the head of the party. You're getting fundraising emails. It must be our fault, right? But, like, we were trying to raise a lot of money online. But that's always been true. Like, people were complaining about the direct mail fundraising, like actual showing up in your mailbox in the 80s, right? Like, this is right. Politics needs too much money. People are annoyed being asked by it. The anger and frustration is exponentially larger now than it was before, I think for a couple reasons. For three reasons. One, we've moved to text messaging, which is much more intrusive than emails. Because now you have spam filters, your updated and promotions folders on Gmail. Like, it's kind of removed from your life. You have to, whether it's your mom, your sister, your girlfriend, your job, or a random commercial account you've never heard of, you still get that glaring notification about a text message, right? Like, why are my text messages not read? It's obviously it's not because I didn't respond to someone I know and love. It's because I got 15 email texts from a pack I've never heard of. And the tone has become so just cataclysmic, right? And so what I think the party has failed to realize, and when I say the party, I mean everyone in the party. I don't mean just like the head of the DNC. It's basically everyone. Is that in a world where it's very hard to follow the news, where just people, we're getting information all random places. One of the most valuable relationships that any candidate, political action committee, business, politician has is a direct one-on-one relationship with their consumer, right? Where you have the ability to email them directly, text them directly, call them directly. And we're taking our number one best asset, and we're just, the only way we're thinking about it is how to get as much money out of their pockets as fast as possible. And not thinking about how do we persuade them to do things. And so I thought about, like, obviously as by professional obligation, pay a ton of attention to the news. So I was like watching when Hakeem Jeffries, spoke for 8 hours or whatever it was to delay the passage of the Republican bill, which is like, obviously that's a largely symbolic thing, but it was, symbolism matters. And what he was doing helped. But most people who are Democratic base, because it happened like randomly in the middle of the day where most people are at work, most people in the Democratic base learned about it from a text message demanding money in exchange for that. Right? People learned that PBS and NPR are being defunded, not from PBS and NPR or the news, from a text message. And so if like I said this in my piece, which is, how would you feel about a friend who only called you and asked you for money? Right? It's like, that's sort of where we are. And we're not thinking about how best to use our massive email and primarily text lists. We're not thinking about the impact of it. And everyone is thinking individually about their own campaign, their own PAC, and not thinking about the fact that I'm not just getting emails from the or text from the DCCC. I'm getting them from a million people. And the other thing is there are a lot of scam PACs and a lot of people using pretty sketchy fundraising techniques that's making it worse. And it's impossible to be a good actor in this system. Like, I think Bernie Sanders, who's raised a ton of money online, his team has always thought very strategically about how to use their list. They don't overuse it. They will sometimes use it just for pure informational or persuasion purposes, not just to ask for money. But if you're getting a gazillion texts, you're not just in your head be like, oh, Bernie does a good job, right? It's just, you're just annoyed by the text. So we're now in the situation where no one has an incentive to be a good actor because you're getting all the downside of the bad acting and maybe, less short-term benefit and money because of it.
Can you expand on the scam packs?
Yeah. So there are these packs that have been set up that are primarily, there's a really big story that went around today in a Democracy. It was a Substack called Democracy and Data, I think, that broke down a lot of how this works. But there is these PACs that basically are started by digital fundraising firms. And so they raise money into the PAC to pay themselves for the fundraising costs and then take their cut off the top. Like, so I pretty plugged into the Democratic infrastructure. I get texts from PACs I've never heard of. And you have to click the link to know what it is, right? And they also do these things where it's like, they'll be like, Barack Obama said it's time to give. Which Barack Obama obviously is not endorsing this random PAC. He gave a speech at some point where he said, now's the time to get in the fight, right? They do that. Right. Like, Rachel Maddow issued a warning, or, Stacey Abrams, there's like using people's names. And most of that money is this constellation of PACs that is run by this company called Mothership Strategies that was the subject of much discussion this week. They're very controversial in the Democratic Party. But I think it was something like 11% of the money they raised actually went to candidates.
Oh, wow.
Like, a lot of it's not all going in their pockets, right? It's a lot of it is their costs. But this level of aggressive text, it's insane. And this level of aggressive texting has a very high overhead. And so they're setting up these PACs. They are raising money in those PACs to pay for themselves, basically. And so it's very... the party has to. I believe the party really has to take a stand here.
The question is, will they?
It's hard. It's really hard. There's no one in charge. There's no. I said this in the piece. There's no fundraising czar who can just say this. There are people like there are a couple of things I think people of power and influence can do. One, they can name and shame the bad actors, right? They can say, like,
does shame still work now?
I think it does. I think informing voters about where the best places to spend their money. Because the other problem with this is a really important point.
Okay, informing as well. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, informing, right? It's just say, or like, let's say, a lot of times you'll see like Kamala Harris said, these funds will use Kamala Harris's name, right? And to say like Kamala Harris issues warning. Kamala Harris's political operation could say we have no association with that, right? Like you have to shame people. They actually did that during the campaign with a set of these PACs related to the ones I mentioned who were raising money, and they thought essentially siphoning money because people thought they were giving to Kamala Harris, and they're actually giving to these PACs, and they actually called them out. So that's one. Act Blue, which is the platform that runs through everything, could do a host of reforms to make it harder for people to get spammed. Put in place some some standards about how you do things. There's a group of, this is about 140 Democratic fundraising professionals who wrote a letter last year with a set of recommendations for Act Blue to do. And I think we really could, in the 2028 Democratic primary, try to, through pressure from people with platforms and people with influence, to normalize better fundraising techniques among our nominees and call out the people who are using the sketchy ones.
I will say I appreciate you sharing the second part of that, because I do feel like there's this common thing with Democrats, whether it be the politicians or a lot of the communicators, is this is bad, and then there's no and there's no secondary thing, and it's like, okay, well, I was already feeling bad. I was already feeling hopeless. What fixes it? And just knowing that there are steps that people could take, it can add to the pressure campaign. I think things more like the normalize that gets into kind of more of an intangible. Okay, well, what's
it's something that people who are actually in charge, who have influence, who control things, should peer pressure works in politics, particularly in a primary where everyone's competing for the same set of voters. Like in the 2020 Democratic primary, there was real pressure on candidates not to take corporate PAC and lobbyist money. And so you don't want to be the only person doing that, because even if you would otherwise do it, I think you can do a similar thing here, which is, we're going to use better techniques to do this. We're going to put in a set of reforms. And the DNC there's one thing the DNC could do in the primary, because they do have leverage in a primary because they control the debate stage, right? And so they often do pledges, right? Because they adhere to the calendar, right? Like, I'm not going to compete in a state before New Hampshire, and if you do, you can't get it on the debate stage. So they could say, here's a set of practices to use in your online fundraising. Agree to that. As a condition of making it in the debates. Like there are things we can do in there. And I think if you do that in the primary, it does make it harder for people at a lower level to do the sketchy stuff.
So from there, I want to jump to Texas. Obviously, a lot of attention there. The Dems fleeing the state. But do you think that this is a situation that's going to last past the next 2 weeks? Is this kind of more just raising awareness and showing some fight rather than, I mean, I don't imagine, it could be completely wrong that we're living in a moment in history where all these people are going to stay in Illinois and New York until December. But do you think this is something that it's raising awareness on the situation, and it's kind of giving Newsom and others the public ammunition to make the changes in their states?
Maybe they will stay away. I don't know. I mean, they're highly incentivized to not allow the Republicans to redistrict some of them out of their own seats, right? If they do legislative redistricting, and some of them have congressional ambitions, so maybe they will. I don't know. In the past, these things people always come back. That's happened when there have been previous times of people fleeing. Delay is very important here. You slow the process down is key. Raising awareness, I think, is the most important thing. So, because one, everyone should know what's happening here. Two, it adds political pressure on the Republicans. This isn't necessarily a popular thing they're doing. And you make an important point, which is does stiffen the spine of the Democratic governors in the other states who have the capacity to mount some sort of response to this.
Do you think it's a really unpopular thing among their existing base?
I think
as far as the Republicans,
it's not. It's an open question about how popular it is among their base. I just think in general, there is such distrust and such belief that the system is corrupt that taking an extraordinary measure to give yourself additional political power is something that Democrats can use to make a case against Republicans. It's always this question of is the hardcore Trump supporter going to care about this? No, they're hardcore Trump supporters. He can do literally almost anything, and they will be fine with it.
I think it goes past that. I think as long as even kind of the most milquetoast, you know what? I just don't like the Dems to at least a certain degree. As long as they're given everything's bad, so no one's bad sort of situation and mindset, that gerrymandering already happens. So why is this any different? Right? It's all a toxic, corrupt game. Then I think maybe I'm being too cynical. I don't think it moves the needle, and it at this point, Democrats and Newsom and others realizing that it's just the rules have changed, the understanding has shifted, and you have to play by this game. I think that's where we are. It's just power. To be crude for a second, it comes down to the core thing of big fuck small, and you just it's a power grab at this point. And if you're trying to play by a set of rules from 10 years ago, you're going to be small.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I am fully supportive of the Democrats doing it. I think what Newsom is doing is good. If we can do something in Illinois, I know Governor Hochul talked about this the other day. They're going to try with it in New York. New York is challenging for a whole host of legal reasons that I'm not a full expert in, but we should try to do everywhere we can. I think that, so I'd say a couple things. One, I don't think this is the issue that's going to swing the election. For sure. But we should, it is an opportunity to make it. I believe the case Democrats have to make is that Trump and the Republicans promised that they were going to come in and be the reformers of this corrupt, broken system. And now they are that system, and they're using it to help themselves and enrich themselves. And this can be a data point in that argument. And I think, one of the things I try to do when I do my political analysis is to focus on who are the people we can actually persuade, who are available to us, and try to break that down. So the groups that I think about in terms of this midterm are people who voted for Trump for the first time in 2024, right? These are new voters. Right. I think, and some of them are agency electorate. Some are people who had not voted previously. Maybe they're in their 30s and the 40s, but they came in because of Trump. The second group is the most gettable for Democrats, which is people who voted for Biden in 2020 and Trump in 24.
Sure.
Right. Do those people have buyer's remorse? Can we get them? And then there is people who may have supported Trump in 2020, but think we need a check. They believe in divided government. They want a check on power. And those people are also available to us. And in this particular thing in Texas might be an argument for that. Because even in 2018, when Democrats crushed in the midterm, you had a whole bunch of people who voted for Trump, who voted for Democrats for Congress. 3/4 of them ended up voting for Trump in 2024. But there is people who do believe very strongly that divided government is good. We need balance. We need a check on power. And so there is going to be a set of voters. So those three voters or groups of voters we get, they don't make up the majority of voters. They don't make up plurality of voters, but it's these pockets of voters that we can go persuade. And that is a difference between losing the House and winning the House, or having a shot at the Senate or having no shot at the Senate.
Do you think that going into the midterms, things might get so polarized that, what is the term? Instead of gerrymandering, is it dummy-mandering? Where do you think, I mean, these are really strong districts, generally speaking, of, plus 10 Trump. But, I mean, we've seen some interesting things happen in special elections of big shifts. Obviously, you can't base anything off of a special election specifically. But, I mean, do you think that there is a risk in a down year? Or, no, that's too much of a gap in most of the places?
I think Republicans were smart in how they did their 2021 redistricting, which was they did not maximize their number of seats. They did incumbent protection. And this was particularly true in Texas, where they sort of saw the changing demographics, particularly among suburban areas, becoming more Democratic. And so they drew the districts to protect their incumbents and protect the number of Republican seats. Trump is now asking them to do the thing. So this is a very important point with Texas, which is Trump is asking them to do the thing they were unwilling to do in 2021, which is to try to increase the number of Republican seats. Because it's pretty simple math. There's X number of Republican voters. If you spread them out over 25 seats, you have a certain number of voters per seat. You spread them over 30, you have fewer Republican voters per seat. And what is really interesting about this to me, and I think Democrats should do everything they can to stop this, but over the medium term and the long term, they could really come to regret this in Texas, because they are betting that Trump's numbers with Latinos in Texas are the norm. And there is no evidence to date that since Trump came on the political scene that Republicans perform as well with Latinos with Trump off the ballot. So according to exit polls, Trump won Latinos in Texas by 11 points in 2024. In the 2022 midterm, Beto O'Rourke, who lost by 11 points, beat Greg Abbott by 17 points amongst Latinos.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so and you see a similar thing nationally with how Republicans did with Latinos in 2024 and how Republicans did with Latinos in 2022. There's I can't remember what the swing is, but it's a pretty significant swing. And so I think they are that may help them in this exact election right now. We don't know that yet, but if there's a big enough wave, they could lose a bunch of these seats in Denver. They could actually regret doing what they did. I think in the long term, they are likely, because even if there's a shift, doesn't even have to go back to the numbers that Obama and Clinton were getting in 2012 and 2016 with Latinos. That comes back to a little bit better than where Biden was in 2020. Some of these seats will be in play for Democrats, and they could end up this process with more seats than they have right now.
Let's get a little dumb then, as we're looking even further. 2028. Everyone hates the question. It's a stupid question, but I feel like I always want to ask everyone. Right now, does anyone have an inkling of, not even looking at polls, because all the polls are based off of the last election, and the new election is where the country's going to be. Is there anyone that kind of pops out to you as a potential front runner, or someone that you think would be interesting for Democrats right now?
Yeah, I mean, you raise, as you say, everyone hates the question. I hate the question. It's an impossible one to answer. But
just imagine the clip 3 years from now.
I know.
Dan knew it.
I know.
He knew it.
I know. Yeah, it really incentivizes you to really take the big swing, because if you're just it's Pete Buttigieg. No one's gonna be like, in 2025, Dan Pfiefer predicted Pete Buttigieg would win the nomination. I think the candidate who, I'm not saying this person's going to be the nominee. I'm not saying this person is our strongest nominee. I don't think anyone knows the answer to that yet. I always tell people that I was around in politics after George Bush won in 2004. After George Bush won, everyone was like, what Democrats need is a governor or a senator from a red state, a moderate from a red state who can win something. People were, this is impossible to imagine. People were crawling all over themselves to try to work for Mark Warner at the time. He was the guy, right? I worked for Evan Bayh at the time. I was the Senate communications director. People were like, Evan Bayh, he keeps winning Republican Indiana. He could be the guy. And then in January 2008, we nominated Barack Hussein Obama from the south side of Chicago via Hawaii and Indonesia. No one knows, right? I think just one of the things that I am watching all the candidates for here, and I will answer your question, I promise, is they're electability. We generally think of how do they persuade swing voters, right? What's their bio? Can they raise money? One thing I'm very interested in now is how good are they at getting attention? Can they navigate this media environment in a way that is more deft than Democrats have done recently? And the person who I think is being under sort of counted in possibility here is AOC.
Oh, okay.
I think she obviously is great at the internet. She knows how to get attention. She is an outsider, and I think an outsider who can run against the Democratic Party is a very interesting thing. You've seen the polls. Democrats, we hate our party right now, and a lot of times this is how Clinton ran. Bill Clinton ran in '92, running against the Democratic Party. Barack Obama was the anti-establishment candidate in 2008. I think we're going to probably nominate an anti-establishment candidate this time. And I just think people should. I don't know if she wants to be president. I don't know if she wants to run for president. Obviously, she has challenges like everyone else, but I'm just interested in candidates who can navigate the modern media environment and win the attention wars. Because I think that's one of the places where Trump and Republicans generally have kicked our butts for the last few years. Is we're all playing this old game of how do we get on CNN and Meet the Press, and let's rage about New York Times headlines on Twitter, as opposed to how do you actually get and hold people's attentions, and that gets harder every single day. I mean, you know this, I know this is sort of what life is like in the media content game, but who is a presidential candidate who can do that? And so I just have my eye on AOC.
I mean, if it happens, we got the clip now.
Yeah, there we go. Yes, I would say I set my clip, because there's always that like person on Twitter who they find the
You
tweet
can ride
from,
that
like,
for
6
like
years
8
ago.
years.
Yeah.
You got that.
So.
Actually, so on the note of like you were mentioning, hopping on MSNBC and stuff. What's your news diet? Whether it be for your job or whether it just be general consumption.
Yeah, it's been really changing over the last couple years. I was like very Twitter heavy for a very long time. It's also weird if you work in politics, like in a Senate office or a campaign office or White House, someone does this job for you. Like you wake up every morning and someone has sent you a document with all the clips and you just read them. That was like very nice. And then when I got out in the world in 2015, I was like on my own, and it was like the peak of Twitter, right? I would just get on Twitter, I would read, and it would like Twitter would then refer me to stories that I would read in full. And now I've kind of like I subscribe to a lot of Substacks. I'm a Substack writer. I subscribe to a lot of them. I look at I like check my inbox in the morning for that. I read all the sort of tip sheets like Playbook, Axios, Brian Stelter's media newsletter, just like the things that are sort of summarizing the news for you. But now I kind of do what I used to do in like 2005, which is I wake up and I go to NewYorkTimes.com and read the stories. So like it's kind of like all over the stuff, like a lot of individual people, and then some of the sort of more institutional media to kind of just like know like what, like I find the New York Times ticker, like the running blog to be very helpful because I'm waking up, I'm on West Coast. So by the time I've woken up, Trump's done some like 9 crazy things. So it's like a very quick way to find out what those are. And then I can go dig into them further by looking at other sources or finding the clips online. Like this morning, he was having a truly bananas interview on CNBC. But that was happening like at, I don't know, before I was sleeping. So I got up really early and then I like went and watched I didn't watch the whole interview. I just watched the clips on Twitter to like keep up. But it's you're just like on a hamster wheel 24/7 trying to like keep up in this media environment.
Yeah, I get I'll in the morning I'll often get a one sheet for my team. But what I've found these days, because I'm most interested in the past year and then moving forward, is what's happening in different spaces. And so my news diet has become almost all right-wing media.
Interesting.
And so like at times it'll be like, okay, I'll have like a 4 box on my TV and I'll be listening to Fox News, but like really specifically living in the commentator space, because that's where we've seen kind of the most movement. And it feels like in the right-wing space right now, there's kind of like the only thing I can kind of equate it to is, I don't know if it's a Highlander situation. I don't know. Like they are taking each other out. And I mean, not all of them. There's like these coalitions, but it looks like they're taking each other out to be like the guy. And it's been really fascinating. And I at times wonder if those on the left might benefit from it, rather than it being seen as like this squabbling infighting, where there is more of a just, I don't know if I want to equate everything that's happening to disagreements of ideas. There's a lot of like some crazy ideologies getting thrown around. But I don't know. I mean, do you ever flip on? You're like, I want to watch the War Room. Let's see what's happening there.
I never watch cable news in general. Like it never comes on my TV. And it didn't when I was in the White House either. Like that was a real point of pride because I thought it was very distorting in my worldview. Because in the White House, you have a TV in front of you and you have the quad box on and you watch all of it. And so I never had it on then either. I do like I usually see it through like clips on TikTok or on Twitter. Like I'm very interested in what is happening, particularly especially in the midst of this Epstein stuff, in the Trump adjacent manosphere world of people who like Rogan, Andrew Schultz, Theo Vaughn, who just like were with Trump, but now have some real concerns. Like that's very fascinating to me, how people who were not like, they're not hardcore conservative Republicans by nature, but came on why they ended up supporting Trump, and then like how they're wrestling with some of the things he's doing is very interesting to me, because I think it's emblematic of some of those voter groups I've talked about, how they're processing some of that information.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyone that I talk to, I recommend it past just like I hate the term, but like what everyone talks about with like the manosphere guys, past that, because I think that a lot of people in our space they're just looking at the clips that get shared around, and they're completely missing the other points that are connecting with people, and it is setting them up for failure when they can like say one line about the person as a dismissal, and then a person sees it. I think it kind of it's not a complete one-to-one, but I think it talks a little bit about going into the last election, and everyone was like, JD Vance is a couch fucking weirdo, and then all of a sudden he's on the debate stage, and you have two potential VPs complimenting each other, and I was like, I thought he was a fucking crazy person. All of a sudden you set yourself up to be like, for a group of people to be like, oh, I was misled about everything, and it ends up actually being helpful. I don't know.
I agree with that. I think sometimes it's a blind spot for me sometimes too. Is it's just like I'm an online person, and so like I actually had. During the election, I started listening. I would listen to full episodes of Theo Vaughn and Flagrant and Rogan to try to. But I had the wrong impression of some of those guys, which sort of was like, oh, it's just like more because I'm looking at the clips, and a lot of the clips shared by progressives like me, and so it's like, oh, they're just hardcore right wing people, and I didn't fully understand the audience. Like one place where I actually had some understanding was, and this was mostly from clips. Like I never watched the whole thing, but I would get so many Kill Tony clips. Right? Do you know? It's just like I'd see a lot of it all the time because TikTok really thinks because I'm a late 40s white man who likes sports that I must be like red pilled. Yeah. So it's like constantly giving me stuff. So I was constantly just assumed that I will. Because I'd seen so much Kill Tony, and then I was kind of like not, I didn't like it, but I was kind of curious about it. So then when the whole thing happened with Tony Hinrich and at the Trump rally at the end, like I had some context for it, but a lot of times, like when Trump first went on Theo Vaughn, I didn't have context for it because I hadn't been paying enough attention to know. So I do like you really got to like, this is true of all media, is like pay a little attention to your mental health as you're going through the stuff. But there is, I try not to watch Fox News because I think that's not particularly helpful. But like I think getting outside of the main spaces is helpful. And smart.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, Fox News has been a very specific thing for a long time, and you can kind of like just pop in and be like, okay, so that's where they're at right now, or that's the line they're hitting. Whereas there's so much more happening, and I think what we end up seeing is that even if cable news is setting most of the conversation up, or at least where things are gonna stem from, so much more interesting and molding is happening in the online space. And I actually think that in a lot of blind spots.
I think a lot of it used to be Fox set the tone for everything, and I actually think that now what's happening underneath is setting the tone for Fox in a very different way.
Okay. Yeah, well, I mean, I guess we'll see. I saw right before we started, I guess there was an update on Trump and Murdoch. They are now postponing Murdoch's deposition. Have you seen that already? Do you see it as it potentially being some sort of Trump cave, or it's just legal? I
hadn't seen it. The Trump Murdoch relationship has always been very interesting and complicated. Like Murdoch obviously opposed him tremendously. Rupert did, in at least up until the end in 2016. And obviously the Wall Street Journal ran those stories after Trump asked them not to, or yelled at them and screamed at them and told them not to. And so that's interesting. But the business of Fox News is so tied into pro-Trump. Like they had that experience right after January 6th when they turned on Trump and they lost all their viewers to Newsmax and OAN at the time. And so, it's like they both think they're the alpha in the relationship, but they both need the other one. And so there's a lot of like back and forth. So I don't know. I didn't see the details of this. And so the suit will be interesting. I would be shocked if it proceeds too far. One, because it seems relatively ridiculous, and Trump is more willing to push the envelope. And I think the CBS's, the Paramounts, and the Disneys are more likely to bend to Trump than Murdoch, interestingly enough, because Murdoch has actual leverage in the situation that the others don't. Because Trump cares what's on Fox News in a way he may not care about the others.
Yeah, I'm just so fascinated by Murdoch in general, of how I guess at the end of the day he is just a businessman, because he does it like he has favorites, but it seems like through the Wall Street Journal and the Fox News situation, I don't understand how you have that fucking position.
Yeah. It seems like I think he's a businessman, and I've heard Brian Stelter from he was on PodSaveAmerica last couple weeks ago talking about all of this, and he said that Rupert Murdoch really views himself as a newspaper man, like in a ideological sense, like in the British ideological tabloids, where like you have a point of view, but you also do journalism, and so that's why. And he's very proud of owning the Wall Street Journal. Like that's a real, like it's a status symbol for him, and so he does not get involved in decisions on what they run. Fox is a little bit like, which his son really runs more, but is like that's just like it prints money for him, right? And that is more maybe the non-journalist side of his brain, like come alive. I don't. It's interesting. It's really I mean, a lot of the fate of the world rests in the hands of this whatever he is, 92-year-old man right now. So it's not great, but yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned Stelter. So I listened to that episode, and as I'm kind of like doing this podcast and talking to people for the first time and becoming more familiar, it's been very fascinating to see certain audiences and certain groups' reaction to the other. Like it sounded like when Stelter got on, he was like nervous. He was like, "We'll see how the fucking audience reacts," and I was like, "Oh, is there something there?" Because even watching Channel 5 in the past month and Hunter Biden going on the Pod Save America guys rant, I was like, oh shit, what's happening? I was like, what's I feel like I'm on chapter 12, and although I will say, just to be transparent, going in to that relatively blind, it was the closest I think I probably got to someone before they were a MAGA supporter hearing Trump, because he spoke with such passion that I was like, I don't even know why, but fuck those guys.
Yeah. I mean, it did.
Like it took you over.
It was resonant, I would say, among some people. I would say that, yes.
Yeah. Do you feel like that was just a quick moment in time, or it's past, and like is that a situation that's continued, I guess?
I think when we sort of were like very public about the idea after the debate that Biden should at least entertain the idea of dropping out. Like that was a very controversial position for us to take. It's very controversial for me personally. I'm from Delaware. I've known Joe Biden my whole life. Not well, but he's been like in my life, and I worked with him in the White House for 6 years. And there were people who were very good friends with who we're not friends with now because of that. Who worked in the Biden White House and were very upset by that. There's still some lingering tension, I think, which was brought to very vivid and evocative language by Hunter Biden. That tension among some people in the Biden world still very clearly exists, and that's an unfortunate situation. Like I wish that was not the world we were in. I very much agree and stand by the position we took back then. But that is a lingering point of tension among some people. Some of them were I think our audience was with us for this, but there were some people who probably listened to us before that who loved Joe Biden and disagreed with that and maybe don't listen to us now. There's people who had probably never heard of us or who came aboard because of that. Like our audience has grown since then. But yeah, I mean, it's uncomfortable. Like I was uncomfortable by the Hunter Biden thing because like I like I like Joe Biden a lot. Like I liked working with him. I think he's it was a great vice president, and it's an unfortunate situation.
Dan, before I let you go, is there any kind of last thing that you want to hit on, whether it be what the Democrats need to do, the future going into the midterms, anything? I always like to, when possible, open it up.
Yeah. I would just give we are staring down the barrel of a possible government shutdown at the end of next month. Government funding runs out. The Senate could not even agree to pass some nominees at the end. Democrats stood firm, which is what I want them to do, but this is going to be a very big deal, and I think could last for a very long time with real dramatic effects. And so I think people have it because it's August and people are thinking about it, but it's the end of September when government funding runs out, and there's no real path to do it. And Democrats very rightly believe, why should I cut a deal if I appropriate all this funding and then you just freeze it? Like what role do we have? And so this is going to be a very interesting, highly consequential month in Congress coming up. So everyone should enjoy their August, and then we're right back in the soup after Labor Day.
I don't know if people are going to be able to enjoy their August, but Dan, I appreciate you. Thank you for the time, man.
Thanks for doing it. Thanks for having me.